Welcome back to the Writer's Hive. This is a bi-weekly chat where we attempt to demystify the writing and publication process in order to create a writer's hive mind. And this week is another special honey seat, hot seat episode where we are putting one of us in the center to talk about our book. We're here to talk about Julie's debut release, A Curse in Ash, which was released October 5th of this year, and it is available in ebook and paperback. Now I will have all of the links in the description box below, but we're going to start off and we're going to talk about the process it took to get this book to publication. So first of all, Julie, can you explain Curse and Ash to us? Give us an elevator pitch.
My book is an adult contemporary fantasy that has a strong main character fighting for agency in two different realms, both of which seek to use her or manipulate her in some way, shape, or form. And she's thrown into a lot of magical and political intrigue while danger lurks very close to home. And she's trying to keep everybody she loves safe.
That's great. I love that. And we have the book right behind you over your shoulder. It has the most beautiful cover.
I can bring her forward.
Yeah, bring her forward. And I was a part, myself and Amber were a part of the earlier sections of the publication process for A Curse in Ash. So we've been sitting on this for a long time. So it's so exciting to see it finally on shelves. Amber, do you want to start off with the questions?
Yeah, and it's a little hard because I've been there with you through the whole process, and I have to remember that the people watching may not have. So talk a little bit about how long it took to write this book.
So I guess at this point on my channel, I've already put out a couple of different vlogs that take you through like the first time that I mentioned this book on my YouTube channel, through the publication deal, through publication. But all in all, it probably took upwards of 5 years, a little over 5 years. And that's mainly because it took me a really long time to figure out what the story was. Amber was a critique partner for the very first iteration of this book when it was still a YA novel and had very little magic in it. And that is definitely not what it is now. So it took a really long time because it was my first attempt at a full fantasy novel. And it required quite a few rewrites until I was happy enough with it to query it seriously and try to get it published or feel comfortable with publishing it. And it really did grow and expand and get better each and every time, even though there were times I was so dejected that I still hadn't gotten it, or I still needed to do work on it, or I can't believe that, it's not done yet. But I knew I had a story there, and I knew I had characters that I wanted people to know. And I knew that I had something that I wanted to tell. And I really wasn't willing to give up on it until I got it right. So I'm really glad I did.
That's great. And it's so nice to hear when writers who are successful in publishing their books about the perseverance you take, because it does take a lot, and you have to spend a very long time with your book. I want to know, how did this book evolve with character setting? Like you said, there's more magic in it, but how did it evolve from first draft to final draft? What are some big main events that changed throughout the process?
Oh man. In the book, my main character, Ashlyn, has a charm bracelet. And in the book that you're going to read, or hopefully want to read, that is full of charms and protections and all these things that aid her in being a very powerful witch and a very powerful magic worker. In the first iteration of the book, it was used by her mother to hinder and suppress and dampen her magic. And she had no idea she had any until towards the end of the first book, when it broke. The first book had nearly no magic at all. And I knew that the second book was going to, and I was like, people are going to be so confused that the first book read so contemporary, and then the second one's going to read very fantasy. So that's a big change, is that my character has already really embraced and been strong and secure in her own magic and in her own power. That is not something that my original character had at all. Also, one of my other main characters, Brynock, is very, very seldomly. In the first original draft of my book, he has maybe a little glimpse or two in the very first iteration of the book. And in that first iteration, he was not a good guy. He was very much one of the villainous characters. And that is not the case in the book that you're going to, in the book that I published. So I think those would be the two largest changes. And they were very large changes. That and, aging it up from YA. I wrote it as YA and then new adult, and then, fully embraced the adult side of things. So there were a lot of changes. There was a lot of rewrites, and it's not a small book. I think each one of the rewrites was like a fully scrapped start from scratch, and I ended around 110,000 for each of those drafts. So it was a lot.
So if you think about your story from start to finish and how it has changed, what is one thing that you were surprised that you were capable of writing?
I think for me, one of the things that really surprised me is like any kind of description of my world. As a writer with aphantasia, I don't see the world that I'm writing very often. So it's one of the things that I really worked with my editor on, was making sure that the scenes were vibrant, that the veil and different parts of the book were as vibrant as they could be, that the fae and fairy and all these different things felt different than the human world, and that magic really did imbibe the whole story. So I'm really proud of that. I also, at the very last second, added something into the end of the book and kind of impress myself with my ability to push the envelope a little bit there. And I think this is going to sound ridiculous, but one of the things that I'm most surprised about for myself with this book was just the fact that I stuck with it as much as I did, for as long as I did, for as many times as I did, because there was never really a time where I thought I was ready to give up, but at the same time, I would get so down that I still wasn't there yet. So I think that, there's a couple different parts of my writing that did surprise me, but I think if anything, it was just that I finally got there.
Throughout this process, either from an earlier draft or later drafts, what was the most difficult scene or chapter or section for you to kind of muddle through to get through to the final book?
Oh, it's a good question. I tend to be pretty lucky in that I don't really struggle that much with drafting. Once I know that something feels right for the story, I usually just kind of go ahead with it. So I don't know if there was any one part of it that was like particularly really, really difficult to write. I think, if anything, one of the aspects of the book that I struggled with the most was making sure that I was respectful and inclusive of the relationships that I was building. I wanted to really do justice to the dynamics of the relationships that I was introducing readers to. And I wanted to be really respectful and knowledgeable in creating those relationships so that they read as believable and diverse, but just, I guess, in a respectful way. So I think that was one of the hardest things. I'm writing about people who have life experiences that I don't have in some situations. And that was probably the hardest part, was making sure that I was building these relationships in a way that readers could connect to, and that were also true to the way those relationships would have played out.
On the flip side, what is one, you can be non-spoilery in case that someone hasn't read it yet, what's your favorite scene or chapter in the book?
Oh man, I don't think it's that spoilery. I think one of the most exciting scenes for me to write was, I don't know, it just felt so light and so carefree. There's two scenes where my characters really get kind of put through the ringer a lot. So whenever they get to experience just joy with their friends, really, really like makes me happy. Like, I just love to see this friend group together, and I love to see them interacting and being snarky and just kind of enjoying each other's company. So those moments where they're able to do that in the midst of like all the other strife and turmoil are really fun for me. So there's like a sleepover scene in the beginning that I love, just because that's very much something that I would have done, with my friends, and just a little bonding moment. There's like a really cute kid's birthday party that's just like, they needed it, they needed to just go and be kids and like let off some steam, because it's just, they've been going through a lot. So there's like these little moments inside of there. And then and I think one of my favorite things, and I laughed out loud every single time I edited it, and every single time I wrote it, was the way that Reardon talks about Brynoch in his head, and the names that he calls him and the way that he refers to him throughout the first parts of the book just crack me up. Like, genuinely, some of those interactions and the snark that the characters have bring me so much joy.
Having read a few iterations of the book myself, one thing that you have a lot of is themes of family in the book, whether it's found family or it's actual family or it's even like a romantic family. How important was it for you when you first started drafting, and then as you did rewrites, to include a lot of family aspects into the novel?
I think that's one of the things that surprised me most, is that like early reviewers said that it was just as character driven as it was plot driven, and that was something that was very unique for them, was that they had found it to be equally both of those things, that they felt like the plot was strong and the character development was strong. I've always considered myself a very character driven writer. Not that my plots are not there, but I prefer to focus on interactions, on dialogue, on the dynamics of relationships and how they play out. It might be the psychology major in me. It might be the fact that I'm the eldest of 4 girls, but I'm very, very entrenched in my own family. And I have a fantastic, supportive, amazing family life. And I also have an amazing group of friends and a fantastic support system. And I knew, given what my characters were going to go through, they were going to need the same. And I know that's not everybody's journey, but I really wanted it to be that way for these characters. And you can see the love and you can see that, support there. And that was 100% something that was always there in every iteration, because it was really important to me that my main characters not feel like they had to go on this journey alone. It was never meant to be a one-person thing. And yeah, I love the friend group, and I love the relationships in this group, and I love Letty's messy family, and I even love Trent's messy family. He's created one for himself after his family, kind of threw him out. So there's different ways to find family, and I think I've tried to showcase as many of those as possible so that, people can see themselves in at least one of the relationships that are in the book.
Yeah, you definitely have a talent for creating very strong and like dynamic characters, along with this plot that's in itself like a character. Like you just have a great talent for that, and that's one thing I really enjoyed about reading your book early on as well, because it was like, I feel like I know these people, and I was on the second chapter. In that vein, I wanted to ask sort of a fun question. If you could spend one day with one of your characters from your book, who would you choose and what would you do?
If you don't pick Brynoch, I swear to God.
That's what I thought of when I read.
Oh man. Oh. That's so thirsty. But honestly, I mean, he's a very diverse and complex and nuanced character. There's a lot going on in that man's head, and he has a lot of life experience. It probably would be Brynoch. I find it very hard to avoid, a dark fae, character with a tortured family past, and he's just very intriguing to me. I really enjoy him. And I think that in any other iteration and at any other time in my writing journey, I would have said like 100% it's Ash. It's Ashlyn, like she's just the coolest person. And I would love to kind of see the way that she like wields magic. I would love to just hang out with her and watch her do her thing and kind of be in her power and take no crud and go out there and do what she does, because she is really impressive. And I do really admire her in a lot of ways, but it would be pretty hard to pass up a day with Bry. I mean, we'd probably just sift through very different places. You'd have to hold me really tight to do it, but like he'd probably just show me around a little bit, it'd be fine.
I think I would just have him pose in different positions and like take pictures so that I could take them and just have them back to remember. But
also not a bad idea.
So on the flip side of Kate's question, what's one character that you would hope to never, ever meet in real life?
Oh no, probably Gabriel. I don't think there's very much redeeming about him. I think that there's definitely a pleasure in pain for him. He is the Unseelie Queen's bloody hand. He is the executioner of the Dark Fae, and he takes great pride in that. Very much one of the reasons that Brynoch and his twin sister have a lot of trauma and trust issues and a lot of resentment for their other siblings. He's just not a good guy, which is fine. Not everybody has to be a good guy, but he also just like takes a little bit too much pleasure in hurting people. So I really just, I don't want to run across him at all, ever.
I wanted to ask another sort of process question, because this is, the first time you've gone from, having a book through publication. What were your challenges and your wins in this process of going through when you got the contract through publication?
First of all, just getting the contract alone was a win. I queried this for quite a while. I did pit mad with it quite a few times. And it was out there on submission to agents and querying for a long time before I decided to go with the publishing house that I went with. And then I think I had my own kind of imposter syndrome that surrounded the way that I chose to publish, because I did go with an author-friendly publisher and a lot of, there was cost up front, but then I had this team behind me and I felt like, it wasn't a real contract. It wasn't a real publishing deal. It wasn't a real book. I had a lot of issues with that. And then I started the process and I was like, no. Yes, it is. And it was tough. It was the first time that I had worked with professional editors, which I take edits really well. So that was not really a problem. It was frustrating to me how much I found the book still needed to be edited after working on it for 5 years, after doing self-edits, after querying. It still shocked me every single time I got a physical proof copy and I was like, this book is done. It's good. I don't have to worry about anything. And then I read it and I found so many errors that I still needed to fix and I still needed to take care of. And so that became a process. That became a really difficult thing, was for me to let go and say, I have legitimately read this book so many times and I've looked at it so many times, and if an error slips through, it won't be from lack of trying. And I just kind of had to let that go. And, throughout the process, there was, some really big ups. Working with the cover designers was a dream. Like, I love my cover. I legitimately can't get enough of my cover. And I'm so grateful to my cover designer, and I couldn't ask for anything better. So that's been really amazing. And then working with my internal formatters and everybody on the team at Atmosphere Press has been really helpful. Transparent, like there was like a little bit of hiccups, just because I was somebody who wanted to be very, very involved in the process. And I wanted to know kind of what was happening and what came next. And I like to be prepared. I don't like to just, turn in one thing and then wait a couple weeks and then get the next assignment or the next step in the process. It's like, I'd like to be prepping that as soon as I can. So once, communication was cleared up, it got a lot smoother. But working with a professional team like this was the first time I really had to communicate and advocate for myself and my book. And that was really scary. Marketing the book has been really nerve-wracking. It's not something that I'm used to. Every time somebody mentions it or says something about it, it still, kind of surprises me. And now, we're filming this prior, but now it's out in the world. And I'm so grateful and so thankful for the early support and the pre-order campaign and everybody who supported me really early on. And I know that's going to continue throughout the book's, lifetime. But truly, I think one of the highest points was just that stinking cover. And then after that, it was really just learning how to work with a team and kind of stand my ground on certain issues that I was really passionate about.
So after going through the process of creating the book, what are some pieces of advice that you would give yourself all those years ago when you started that might help other writers in your shoes today?
Oh gosh, just not to give up. If you have a vision for your book, really stick with it. I think that there was a lot of times where I felt like I should have had it right the first time, and then I should have had it right the second time. And why is it taking this long? And every single time I wrote that book and every single time I worked on it, it got so much better, like significantly so much better. So embrace the process. It's going to be long. It's going to be so much longer than you want it to be, but it truly will. Like, they say like, there's no wasted words. Everything is a learning experience. You get better the more you write, even if you scrap something. Truly, like, you do. This book would not be what it is right now if I had stopped at any of the other iterations. And I don't think that this is something that I would have been able to sleep on and never tell. So if you truly feel that way, that, you know, if that book that's in your heart never sees the light of day, you truly would be sad. Like, it just wouldn't be okay with you. It wouldn't sit well with you. Keep fighting for it. I wrote other books while I was still querying this. I wrote multiple books while I was working on this and querying this. And I just kept thinking, like, those are more marketable. I should just stop. I'll put this in a drawer and maybe I'll, you know, come back to it after who knows how long. Let me go do something that's market friendly. Let me go do something that's going to be easier to sell. But I knew if I never told this story and these characters never saw the readers that I wanted them to see, I would be miserable. So I truly feel like if you feel that way in your heart, that like, this is a story you want to tell, these are characters you want to bring to life, that you want readers to know, just stick with it. You know, it's going to get frustrating. And I wish I could tell you that there's a part of this process that's easy, or there's a part where it's just like, oh, this is like smooth sailing, no big deal. No, it's kind of work all the way across the board. And once you're done writing, you're going to feel really upset that your work's not done and that you now have to market yourself. Like, I have no problem editing. Being forced to also be a business person stings, but it's a necessary evil. And I found a weird kind of joy in it because, again, the more I market myself and the more that I talk about my book, the more readers are going to find characters that I love and hopefully fall, you know, in love with my story and my characters too. So just stick with it. It might not get easier, but it's going to be worth it.
So, talking about how you wanted this book to be out with readers, I'm privy to this information, but tell us what is next for this series.
Oh no. So I am currently writing book 2 of this series. My goal, hopefully I met by the time you're seeing this, was to finish the first draft of book 2 before book 1 comes out. And as I was writing book 2, because I originally was like, oh, I can make this a duology. That's not going to happen. So at this point, I am reverting back to my original idea. For the last 5 years, this was always a trilogy. It was always 3 books. There was always a larger story to tell. And I thought I might be able to do it in 2 books. And then I realized it was going to be either a behemoth or I was going to be rushing storylines that I really wanted to give more justice to. So it will be 3 books. Don't hold me to that, but I'm assuming at this point it will be 3 books, and book 2 should already be, you know, drafted. So that's what's next, you know, title reveals, cover reveals, all of that to come. But these characters are definitely not done. And if you've read the book and if you've gotten to the end of the book, you know that there is definitely more story to tell. And I would love to tell you that, you know, book 2 comes and everything is smooth sailing and we just get to you know, have all the spicy bits and all of the fun bits, but that's definitely not our character's lot. So it's going to be quite another ride.
Well, thank you so much, Julie, for being a good sport on our second honey seat. And I did have a question of the episode for you. So what is one story that you've either published or you are currently writing that you don't think you could ever let go of? I think that's an important theme. And as we can see, Julie was very successful. She didn't let go of this story. She persevered, and now she has an amazing debut novel. And if you are at all interested in checking it out, I will have all of the links in the description box below. And we will see you in 2 weeks on Julie's channel for another episode. So we'll see you soon.
Thank you for having me.
You weren't a guest. We didn't have you.
I know, that was weird.
We waved long enough like idiots.
Well, you're the one who controls the record button.
I don't know. I was just like, I felt you were like, thanks for answering our questions. And I never said thank you. I just looked like an ingrate.
So, oh, wait.
It was really aggressive.
No, that's fine.